Good morning, everyone. This is Deanna Stewart at Early Learning. Thank you for joining our ELAC special meeting on standards alignment this morning. We just want to remind you to please put your phones on mute. And if you do have any questions, to just type them into the webinar, and we will read them off during the question portions of the slides. So you should be able to see your slides on the screen already. We will take pause during the question portion of each slide. You should have those as well. You received them in email. If you have any issues hearing us, please just type it in your computer, and then we'll address that at that time. Please don't put us on hold so that we don't hear any music. If you need to pause on your end, just hang up and call back in. And I think that is it. So I'm going to pass it over to Luba, and she can start us off.
Well, good morning. Thank you for joining this special ELAC webinar, and thank you for your interest in the licensing rules alignment. We will pass along to our conversation today, so it will be important to pause and pace appropriately, so we will be able to answer your questions and also present the information that you ask us to bring to your attention. I know that you are joining us while I'm talking. I just can hear the rings and clicks on the phone. So again, it will be very complicated for us to have a conversation with environmental noise. So please mute your phones so we will be able to have a conversation. And please start your questions on the webinar box. So we will be reading them aloud and go through all of them today. Okay, with this I will start, and what we're discussing today, per your request, I will give you a brief lock alignment update, so specifically update on the licensing rules. And then we will look at several rough draft clarifications. You've been asking to bring it to our you will be asking to bring it to your attention, and what you have is a separate handout that will be emailed to you as an example of what we are preparing and what we hear from the community. Then there is specific ELAC questions that have been asked in the last meeting. So I would like to give you some answers, and I hope they will satisfy all of the wonders around those particular topics that we will discuss. And then after that, we will actually finally move to the main point of our today's conversation. We would like to introduce you a new idea, a new approach around negotiated rulemaking and public comment process as we are moving forward with the process of aligning licensing rules. So moving to the next slide, where you can see the updated timeline. So if you look at updated alignment timeline, it's going to have two components. Horizontal alignment component, which is alignment of the licensing rules. As you remember, the startup require us to align licensing rules for non-school age services, meaning licensing rules for the family homes and centers. And the second part of the early startup ask is vertical alignment, aligning licensing rules with ECAP performance standards, so their foundation of health and safety will be the same, similar for all of their services and programs in Washington State, and to use early achievers as a quality framework for this alignment. So what you can see on this updated timeline. What you also can see is the timeline is slightly changed, and so actually we will talk in the second part of our conversation about negotiated rulemaking and public comments process. If you will look at May and August 2017, on the timelines, you can see that both of those processes will be integrated together, and both of them will happen simultaneously from May to August of this year. And we will talk in length about it later. But I just would like to put it to your attention that this is one of the updates of the timeline. Also, the timeline now includes progression in achievers and ECAP part of progression and the community input process that we are planning to around the rest of the progression, not only about licensing rules, but also in achievers and ECAP. And another addition to this updated timeline is now we are putting a specific date on at what particular point we are planning and proposing to start enforcing licensing rules. And as we see there, August of 2018, it's what we've been proposing, and all those updates and changes that we're incorporating into the timeline will not anyhow move our date for enforcing the rules. With this, I would like to remind us about that alignment process started approximately 2 years ago, and this process is well developed by the internal group, as we have it at the Department of Early Learning, the steering committee, and we also have a statewide advisory committee. So the principles that you have in front of you are actually been developed by both of those groups. And I would like to have a very brief overview of those principles, because I think it's what many people do not remember or may not be fully aware of, that we are operating with this particular process based on the principles that have been developed not only by the department but also by the statewide advisory committee that is overseeing the alignment group. So you see, evaluation and observation is an ongoing process of continuous improvement that we implemented around the alignment process, while keeping the child and family in the center of this process. Also, we are striving to simplify the rules, looking at the level of language and level of readability of the language, as we are expecting the minimum qualification requirements for our providers to be a high school diploma and or GED. So it means for us that the readability level of the rules must be at the level that we are expecting our providers, the minimum qualification level of our providers to have. So it's what we've also been focusing, how to simplify the rules and also make them readable, so we all can understand and have a shared understanding of what these rules are asking us to do. And also efficiency. So we also know that we are duplicating a number of requirements if we will look at the whole progression from the foundational licensing rules up to the ECAP or early achievers highest levels. So how we can minimize those duplications and eliminate them so we will be efficient and our providers also will not experience multiple monitoring activities looking at the same things in their environments. We also are striving to be as transparent as possible with you as our advisors and with the whole community around our plans and how we're implementing the Early Start Act requirements. We also recognize that Washington State is a very diverse state, and also the Indian community is a diverse community, not only from the demographics perspective, race and ethnicity and language and culture, but also from the perspective of parent choice. There we have multiple settings, and it's a diverse mix setting market. So because of that, we have to incorporate all of their differences in settings and all of the differences in uniqueness of the diverse services into this product of the aligned standards. And cultural humility is a consistent principle that we are operating based on, consistently pausing and thinking how what we're creating may impact communities, diverse communities of providers from the race and ethnicity perspective, as well as from the settings perspective, as well as from the culture and linguistic perspective. So on the next slide, you can see the progression pyramid. It's going back to the foundation of the pyramid is representing our horizontal alignment, and the vertical line is representing a progression, a vertical alignment from the foundational licensing rules up to the highest level of quality, to the level of ECAP or early achievers level 4 and 5. So today we will not focus on all of it. Today we will focus only on the licensing rules. And you would understand why. Because in order to create the full progression, we first of all have to create the foundational part of the progression. It's where we can now talk more in length of how those foundational pieces moving, of horizontal alignment is moving forward, while early achievers in ECAP are preparing their community engagement events. If you will go back to the timeline, starting April up to September of this year. So let's look at what's been happening so far. So we will see how our principles being implemented and how our community engagement being set up through this process of up to 2 years that we've all been experiencing. So as you all remember, in November and December of 2015, we have 22 community meetings that provided input not only to the full progression, but also to how to create licensing rules and what particular wishes community has around the licensing rules, as well as the full progression. As many of you remember, we provided you with some options for the content areas of the early achievers framework, and you kind of look at all of those options and be choosing the options or mixing the options, providing us with the input. And the department created a report that you can find on our website, analyzing data and identifying specific hot topics that further guided our feedback process that happened in April and May of the last year, where we been engaged in 23 statewide feedback meetings, looking at the subset of licensing rules, and the subset of licensing rules been identified by the input data, looking at what will be the hot topics. And as you remember, those hot topics being developmental screening, professional development, meals and menus, as well as some administrative rules. So through the feedback process that also been looking at the subset of the licensing rules from the racial equity and cultural community perspective, is collected by Paragraph 5, and you also can see the report around the feedback process at the Thrive and the Department of Learning website. I would like to express our greatest appreciation to Thrive by 5 and regional early learning coalitions who've been tremendously helping us with the community engagement process. And as you look at the numbers of people and stakeholders who've been engaged, you can see how transparent and how focused and targeted towards the diverse communities and all the communities of our providers this work has been. I also already mentioned the Alignment Advisory Committee that's been guiding and overseeing, consistently overseeing the work. We have approximately 80 members in the advisory committee. Approximately half of the members are consistently participating in the meetings, in the monthly meetings. And now, as we in the middle of the waiting process, and we will talk today about rating process. I will provide you an update. So as you know, we finalized the focus groups, and right now we're in the final stages of the community survey process. The next step that we're all looking forward to, and what we will discuss today, will be negotiated rulemaking and public comments, as well as we're putting together an online survey that will give you an opportunity to provide us additional feedback on the process. And also, we are putting together a package around the alignment process communication package, where you will be able not only see everything that I'm talking about right now, and we will talk today through our webinar, but also some of the changes and adjustments and additions and revisions that we are putting together for the licensing rules right now, and in the future we definitely will do it for the ELAC and ECAP part of the progression, as we're collecting your comments and collecting your recommendations. The latest version of the licensing rules, the latest draft of the proposed licensing rules, been put online in November of last year. So right now it's open for all of the providers and stakeholders in the community, and we've been consistently receiving comments in a number of different ways. So those comments that we're collecting right now will definitely impact the version of the proposed draft that will go to the negotiation public comment process. And we're planning to put this second draft, first revision of the proposed draft online by the mid-April. I would like very briefly, and because we do have a handout, and I'm more than sure that you've been able to review the handout, to talk about some myths and around the standard development as well as the process at ELAC. So with the revision of the latest draft of their of the licensing, of the proposed licensing rules, there have been some misunderstandings as well as some misconceptions, as well as some of the things that are not expected from the community to see. So some of the reactions or some of the reflections to the rules that have been proposed. So all of it together created a number of comments that have been brought to our attention. And I would like, as an example of what will be posted online, by the beginning of April, end of March, to give you kind of an overview of some of the specific comments that we've been having a significant volume of them. So the first one is square footage, and I would like to say it's been a big misunderstanding of two concepts. So the first concept is the occupancy concept. And as you know, that occupancy is not an authority of the Department of Early Learning. Occupancy is defined by the State Fire Marshal Services. And as we all know, occupancy is looking at all of the people who will be occupying a particular space. And it's for provider to define what particular space provider would like to license for the childcare services. So based on what provider will define for a fire marshal as a learning program space, it's what will be assessed by the fire marshal in regard of all people who will occupy this particular space. So as we will be trying to, in the original draft, we've been trying to spell it out, but it seems like it created a confusion. So now we decided that we will have a direct reference to the fire marshal occupancy codes, so the providers in the community can see where they're coming from, because again, it's not a part of the Department of Learning Authority. We're not making decisions around the maximum occupancy. What the department is responsible for is for the capacity. And capacity is defined by the number of children or a particular space that could be occupied by whatever fire marshal is identifying as a max occupancy. So as you see, the process is the same as it used to be. Any provider can explain it to you. But again, us trying to spell out a fire marshal language created some misconception and misunderstanding. So we are going back to separating those two concepts is maximum occupancy and capacity. And the rule in reality, how it will be implemented, will not change anything at all. It will be the same process and the same practice as we have right now. So there's a number of questions about licensing requiring bachelor degrees, and it's definitely a misconception. Licensing rules do not require any bachelor degrees, so you can go online and see it yourself. Licensing is looking at the minimum qualification requirements at the same EC certification level for different positions at different level of EC certification. Starting from as minimum as CDA requirements, there's 12 pages for the initial certificate up to the state certificate. Again, depends on the position. There's been also another misconception in regard to frequency and repetition of food served. Different providers operate based or use different food programs, and we are looking at how to align all of those different type of requirements in different food programs, and it's what we are changing into. You can see it in your handout. In regard to developmental screening, going back to the last spring community feedback process, where a number of diverse communities has been definitely very importantly pointing out that the current developmental screenings do not reflect the diversity of our children and families. We agreed not to require providers to actually conduct developmental screening. Providers who are doing it right now successfully, they can continue to do it. The licensing rules are requiring providers to educate parents and educate families on the importance of developmental screening and refer them to providers who may help with those services to the families and to the providers. So they will take responsibility of developing a list of services and providers around developmental screening, which we have available in different communities, and this list will be posted online, so providers will not be left alone in trying to search who in their communities may provide those services. But we will at least provide a begin step for providers, then later they can start building up their network of their of the developmental screening services. With toothbrushing, we all know, and we will talk about it a little bit later, that it's requirements that are very focused on the health of the children, and dental health is one of the biggest predictors of the overall health. And as we also know, behind the CCDM requirements are the National Healthcare Performance Standards. And we all know them by the name of Caring for Our Children, and the Caring for Our Children basics, and there is a bigger subset of the standards overall, Caring for Our Children big document. So we also can definitely justify the need of the toothbrushing by looking at the CCDM requirements and also Caring for Our Children basics. And the last reference that I would like to make is about the continuity of care requirements, and we all know how it's important, specifically for infants and toddlers, to have consistent caregivers. And it was an intent to help providers to look at the continuity of care as a very important component of their practice. And we agree that asking for specific number of providers and a specific number of the providers being an overstep in regard of using our authority. So we will adjust this rule, we will edit this rule, and we will not require a specific number of the providers for infants and toddlers. But what we would like to put in place, the providers will have a policy that will start helping them to think about continuity of care and the importance of the same caregivers for specifically younger children. So with this, I will move to questions. If you have any questions, please start them, because for the people who join us later, please mute your phones because we can hear environmental noise if you didn't do it, and it's not helping us anyhow in our conversation. And if you can type your questions on the webinar type in boxes, it will be very helpful. So we have a couple of them, so we will read them aloud.
Okay, so the first question is the language on the square footage returning to the current language of 35 square feet of usable floor space for each toddler or older child as currently listed in the WAC?
So I think I need the clarification. Are you talking about maximum occupancy, which again, not anyhow an authority of the Department of Early Learning, or are you talking about the capacity? So please clarify for me, because occupancy, based on the fire marshal rules, requiring consideration of all of the people who are part of this particular space that the provider would like to license for childcare. And I'm referring to the occupancy code. And for the centers, there's one type of occupancy code. And for the family home providers, it's a different type of occupancy code. So our new proposed language will refer directly to those specific occupancy codes. We will not say anything by how we read it. We will allow and we will highly suggest for the providers and stakeholders to read it themselves. So we will create a shared understanding of the fire marshal occupancy rules. Wait, can we move to the second question so this one will be clarified?
Yes. Okay, so second question is, will Dell provide training on the CACFP food program requirements for those providers who do not participate in the USDA food program?
Yes, absolutely. We will, what will happen after we will find the rules, after the negotiation and after the public comments, and we will conclude them hopefully in August. And then we will have up to 8 months before, if you will go back to the timeline, before we will start enforcing the rules. So this is where we will have time to communicate and train providers and licensors on all of the rules and all of the monitoring protocols that we will be implementing. So yes, absolutely. We will provide the training. If you're not a part of the USDA, if you're not a part of the ACE food program, then absolutely this training will be available. Any other questions? Okay, so if there will be more questions or clarifications for the first question, then unfortunately, again, I'm not quite sure we're talking about occupancy or capacity. Please type it in and we will go back to it. So with this, I will move to the next part of our webinar. At the last ELAC meeting, there have been 3 questions asked as a clarification to the presentation that been given to ELAC. So the first question, how should ELAC be involved in the weighted WAC process? The second question, what about the small business economic impact statement? And the third question, Dell will share the regional profiles used to invite participants to the focus group. So I will jump to the third one because you have a handout that provided to you. It's an Excel spreadsheet with the data. So the regional early learning coalitions catchment areas that will give you a chance to see what we provided to the coalitions and what are the target populations that we ask coalitions to focus on. So as I will move to the next slide, what possible involvement of the ELAC in the weighting process? So as we started the weighting process with the focus groups and with our surveyor, the weighting process will not stop at this point. So as you can imagine, what will happen as a result of it, that each rule will have its own weight, and we will discuss it and negotiate it, not during the negotiated rulemaking process and public comments. So what I've been trying to say is that through our negotiation and public comments, not only the content will be discussed and negotiated, but also the weights will be discussed and negotiated. And again, this process will not be done by even that, because we are implementing weightings for the first time in our licensing system in Washington State. So it will be an evaluation study about the weights, where we will be engaged in up to 12 months and collecting data, and then we will present the data report to you as well as to the rest of the community to learn more about how weights are supporting our licensing processes, and specifically consistency of our licensing processes, and do we need to make any adjustments to the originally assigned weights. So what I will suggest that if you will continue to provide us with advice, input, and feedback, it will be very helpful. If you will help us to educate our stakeholders and community and public about the importance of the weighting, because it's a risk assessment which is behind it, and our consistent focus on health and safety of children, specifically from the perspective of direct and indirect harm. It will be very helpful. If you will take the role of representing a stakeholder provider community through the initial steps that we will implement for the weighting of the weighting licensing rules, it will be very helpful. And also overall, if you will provide your consistent support to understand the alignment process, it definitely will be very valuable for the department. I'm more than sure that you can come up with some other ways of how you can be helpful to us overall and to your specific community that you're representing. Please let us know, or contact me or Diana or whoever you will feel more comfortable to contact, and let's talk it through what other ways of support we can consider and will be helpful not only for the department but also and specifically mostly for the community. The second question was about small business economic impact statements. And what I put together in 2 slides is the RCW requiring the department to develop an economic business statement or consider the level of impact that any change may bring to the small businesses. And if we will move to the second slide, the second RCW is allowing the department to look at some exemptions and what those exemptions may include. So this is what we are looking at right now. We're looking at both of those RCWs, and we are sorting their rules by justifications of why we need to develop those rules or why we need to implement those changes. And trying to identify what particular impacts we may need to research and calculate and bring to the community attention, and what particular impacts are mandated by the federal government or by the state government, and then we will have an exemption of defining those particular impacts. So it all will be part of the negotiated rulemaking and public comments process, and I'm more than sure that we will learn more from the perspective of what we need to research and the perspective of the impact, because there also will be different type of impact, or maybe different type of impact to different type of settings. We also need to think about impact toward the diverse communities of the providers. So there's a lot to discuss in regard to the impact. So again, we are preparing what we consider to be based on those 2 RCWs. We need to bring to the negotiated rulemaking and public comments attention, as well as to the public attention. But I'm more than sure that we will uncover more. And as you've been able to review your question 3, the data subset that we provided to the 10 regional area and I just will briefly name the data points that have been included in the profile, community profile for each of the coalitions. The percentage of family, home, and center providers, percentage of private and subsidy providers, race and ethnicity, language, full and extended day Head Start and ECAP services. So this particular subset of data have been key data for their community profile, for the focus groups, for the waiting process. And we will continue to use the same data for the negotiated rulemaking, and we will talk about it in a little bit. Any questions before we'll jump to the weighted WAC update? Okay, so we don't have any questions so far. So again, please keep processing. Okay, so we have one.
Okay. In the current WAC, it states what the square footage should be per classroom based on the number of toddlers or older in the classroom. So this is going back to the other question. What is the difference between what is currently stated and the Washington Building Code? Why are you using the International Building Code as a basis for our state rule?
So there's no difference process-wise. We, as the Department of Learning, are not using the International Business Code. Fire Marshal, statewide Fire Marshal, is using the International Business Code for the family home environment. So Fire Marshal is using an occupancy code for the center environments and the international code for the family home environment. So it's all available online on the Fire Marshal website. You can contact Fire Marshal and have a specific language. As we read the language of the Fire Marshal code, it's not anyhow different from what we have right now. And we are not anyhow changing the process of licensing for capacity. Because again, Department of Early Learning is not licensing for the occupancy. Department of Early Learning licensing for the capacity. I hope it's helpful. Okay, so moving forward with the weighted WAC update. You can look at their, so in the focus groups in the survey, I think the first thing that we need to understand is it's based on the methodology. And it's a nationally recognized methodology developed by the National Association for Regulatory Administration. And Department of Learning is a part and a member of the National Association for Regulatory Administration as any other licensing services in our state. And this methodology been not only used for the licensing services around the nation and as well as in other countries, for example, Canada is using it, but also the current Head Start performance standards are also built on the same methodology. So we are in partnership with the NARA, National Association of Regulatory Administration. They allow us to use the methodology and replicate the methodology to establish a research-based process specifically around data collection. It's why we're also not doing it by ourselves. Department contracted with CCG, contracted who've been doing this work around the nation with more than 5 different states. Looking at the risk assessment of the licensing rules, specifically violation of the specific licensing rules, and also helping to identify ways for the licensing rules. Not only in healthcare, as you know, there are rules in other licensed services, but they also have a portfolio of projects in healthcare. So if you will look at their next slide, again, back to the timeline, it's what we're doing right now in November and March of this year. We are in a process of weighting rules. Weighting rules is a risk assessment process because as we all know, operating different level or severity of violation of the rule, because if you will violate, if the provider is violating one type of the rule, the level of risk for the crime, direct and indirect crime of a child could be different if a provider is violating a different type of rule. Right now, we don't have these differentiations. We don't have a risk behind violation identified. This is what weighting is helping us to identify a risk level behind different types of violations, and then provide different type of support, or put together some level of actions if violations are high risk. So if you will look at the goals of the weighted process, so first of all, it will help us to look at the resources from the perspective of technical support. Because some of you remember that some time ago, licensing services used to have a level of technical support for the providers which entering the licensing services, or who may experience some issues with licensing and being consistent compliance with licensing. So we would like to be in depth, and this differentiation and risk assessment behind violation of different rules will help us to create resources that will allow us to provide technical support and differentiate our actions. So not all of the out of compliances will immediately jump to the level of administrative or legal actions. There will be some technical support resources that we will provide in regard of whatever issues providers may face. So we also would like to develop a shared understanding what is health and safety, and what is direct and indirect harm to children. So we as a community of providers, as well as community families and parents, will have a shared understanding what is harmful for children in direct and indirect ways. It also will reduce variance and specifically inconsistencies. It will use our not research language but our common language, inconsistencies in decision making. Because we all know that right now our licensing services are inconsistent. For the similar type of out of compliance, providers in different parts of the state may face different type of outcomes or different type of licensing actions. So we would like to eliminate it and minimize it as much as possible. This is also why weighting licensing rules is important. And also it will give us a chance to see what particular actions need to be put in what particular time, because some violations are first-time violations, some violations are frequent violations. Let's say from year to year to year, the provider may have the same issues. So it's what we may need to, versus it's a snapshot and it just happened once. So this is what we also will have to consider, and weighting logs will give us a chance to do that. So moving to the next slide, it's we're going back to the process and methodology. So there are specific steps, and we briefly mentioned them. So again, focus groups, so the first step, and focus groups help us to sort the rules out. The focus groups actually look through the all proposed licensing rules. It's been a very deep and very complex process for all of the people who participated. And again, I would like to share greatest appreciation with all of the people who participated, and coalitions and tribes who've been behind helping us to organize it. So, and they pre-sorted the rules. So they looked at all of the rules and been saying, yes, I can see potential harm, or no, I cannot see any potential harm if this rule will be violated. So they help us to pre-sort it, which actually help us to narrow a survey almost in 50%. So what is happening right now, and we're in the final stages, actually we're closing the survey today, and I do have a preliminary numbers. So actually we've been able to meet the goal of the sample of the survey, and we will talk about it later. So the survey has been created based on the data that's been collected through the focus groups. And it's been, we've been recruiting participants based on, again, based on the methodology, and based on the data of demographic profile providers and type of setting profile providers and geography profile providers. So we've been looking at it, a profile of our providers statewide and identifying how many providers of one particular type we need to engage in this process, so we'll have a fair representation of our biggest sample of the providers. The next step will be to analyze the survey data and actually identify the weights based on this analysis of each rule. And again, I would like to mention again that it will be a part of the negotiated rulemaking process as well as public comments. So we will not only collect public comments and will not only negotiate around the content of the rules, but also weights will be negotiated, and we will definitely like to hear and see their comments about the weights. And then step 4, which will happen after negotiated rulemaking and public comments, it will be training, there will be pilot and evaluation of their pilot, and then a communication of if any adjustments will be made to their originally assigned weights. So in the next slide, you can see a map of the weighted lab focus groups. There have been 14 focus groups total with 196 participants, and as you remember, we limited focus groups to up to 20 people per focus group. So you see we're almost at the max of the number of participants per focus group. As you also see, we've been doing our best to represent the whole state. So groups been conducted in all of the parts of the state. If you will move to the next slide, it's where you can see additional data out of 196 participants. You can see a number of family home providers, center providers, stakeholders, providers who associate themselves with SCIU, as well as parents. You also can see data, racial, ethnic, and linguistic and cultural diversity data in the bottom of the slide. Any questions about the focus groups and the overall methodology of the weighted ROC before we will move to the survey update? Okay, so we don't have any questions so far. Again, as you're processing, please feel free to type your questions. And I will give you an update on the weighted ROC survey. So the goal of the survey is to determine the set of the rules that will be included in the actual survey. So as I mentioned, focus groups help us tremendously to narrow the survey to up to 50% less questions by sorting things out. So the survey participants' role is to identify a weight for each rule which is a part of the survey. All of the rules that are not a part of the survey will have a level 1 weight, the minimum weight. It's why they're not included, because the focus group has been identifying that there are no significant harm that if these rules will be violated, may cause to children in a classroom. So it means, if you all think about it, that approximately 50% of the current rules have a minimal violation level. So it is perspective. It means that majority of 50% of the rules are from the perspective of what type of things will be put in place if those rules will be violated, if provider will not be in compliance. It means it will be technical assistance. I think it's a great news for all of us. And I'm more than sure that the percentage will grow through the weighting because, again, the weighting is identified by the scale from 1 as a minimum risk up to 8 as the highest risk. So in the how we identify their sample. So it's been a randomly presented sample based on their statewide profile. So if we look at the statewide profile based on the methodology, our methodology, National Association of Regulatory Administration, we have to look at the 420 participants with a 95% confidence level. So we identified where the focus group fell because one of the questions that focus group helped us with was who needs to participate in a survey and what particular stakeholder groups we need to consider and what role they will play in a survey. So as you see in the slide, there are two particular groups. Stakeholder groups have been identified as experts, which are childcare providers, center home, as well as program type of childcare providers that provide not only childcare services but also head start and e services, as well as the public electricals. And also they're looking at the stakeholders in the second subgroup. And as you see on the slide, this is who we consider to be additional stakeholders. So the participants who are providers, our expectation was that they will be able to answer survey in full. So they will provide us with for every single content area in every single rule. While for their stakeholders subgroup, the expectation was that they can choose something we would like to be provided for all of the standards and for all the areas of content. But because the expertise could be focused on some particular bucket of their proposed licensing rules, they could provide their answers and put their weights not for all of the rules, but for a subset of the rules that they feel more comfortable to provide to answer and provide weights for. The questions, if we will go to the next slide, questions they focused on the direct harm and indirect harm. And you see the definitions of the direct harm and indirect harm in front of you. They're not our definitions, the Washington State definitions. Those definitions are national definitions for the direct and indirect harm. So this is what survey participants are consistently asking themselves as they are looking at the survey questions, meaning looking at the proposed licensing rules. If this rule will be violated and the provider will be out of compliance, will it be directly or indirectly harm? So moving forward, this is what survey is looking for. The original due date was March 15, March 3rd, I'm sorry, and then we got a lot of feedback from the participants that they are in partial submission, but in order to finalize their full submission, they need additional time, so it's why we gave additional week and a half, and today is the final date of the survey. And you see some targeted numbers. And you kind of see data that I had by March 3rd. So the target number of the active group are actually our childcare providers group, then 358, and by March 3rd we have 217 stations. And we knew that at least 90 submissions will go forward because number of community organized specific groups, survey submission groups, and organized by the communities for their providers whose language would be different than English. Primary language would be different than English, and we knew for sure that there will be approximately 90 submissions coming from those meetings. And also non-expert stakeholder subgroup, the targeted number was 62, and by March 3rd we had 55 submissions. As you see, we're successfully closing the survey today, and we are looking forward to bring you more updates on our data and how weights will be assigned to different rules. Any questions?
There is one question. Oh, it's a comment, so we can see that.
What is the comment?
The focus group should possibly include K-12 schools if Dell is going to continue to license the school preschool programs.
So, yes, focus groups included the providers who operate in school districts. Focus groups, we definitely can put together the number. We just didn't look at this particular data point. We will be more than happy to give you the number of participants in the focus group who actually be representing the school district. Who come in, we will give you the data point. How many? Okay. So we don't have any questions or comments. Again, as you're processing, please feel free to continue to post your comments and questions. And with this, we will move to the main and second part of our webinar, negotiated rulemaking and public comment storage.
There's one further.
Okay, let's focus on the question. We can have a question.
If we're understanding the slide correctly, there's a chance you won't meet the target. What does that do to the confidence interval?
So again, let's go back to slide 27. So and compare it to slide 25. So as you see, we have to have 420 participants of the survey with 95% confidence level, which means that 5% is in its kind of extremes. We may not have this 5%. So going back to 27, slide 27, if you will add 358 with 90, well, then you will be over the original number that we needed as a minimum number, 420, plus 55, and I'm not sure if now we have more because 55 is very much still, and I'm not sure if we have more answers from the stakeholder group. So actually, we have more submissions that we originally that we need to have the minimum number of submissions. Okay, let's start talking about negotiated rulemaking and public comments approach. Before I will move and ask Chloe Anderson, who is a part of our today's webinar, and she is the Department of Early Learning rulemaking coordinator, and she will give us a perspective of the legal part of negotiated rulemaking and public comments. I would like to highlight one more time that we're looking at integrated effort implementing negotiated rulemaking and public comments. So how we can align those processes that they can support each other, so the negotiated rulemaking will not be in isolation from the public comments. And with this, I will ask Lori to come in and give us a legal perspective for negotiated rulemaking and public comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm fairly new to the department. I started in November as the rules coordinator, and I am really happy to talk to you today about our process that we're going to proceed with. So, on the slide in front of you is the timeline that Elizabeth had mentioned, and we'll come back to this if we go on to the next slide. This is an excerpt from the Administrative Procedures Act, and it's the APA that governs rulemaking for all state agencies. And the APA ensures that the rulemaking is a very public process. We fully appreciate the effort that it takes to comply with agency rules, and we want to make sure that our stakeholders are involved as we develop those rules. So this particular excerpt talks about at the very beginning when an agency begins its rulemaking efforts, it gives notice to the public that it's going to be working on rules for a particular subject. That starts off the public piece of it, and As we develop language in this agency, whenever possible, we put a working draft out to the public for them to comment on, and as we did with the weighted rules, and as we're continuing to do. And then as we propose rules, based on the comments that we received, we make some tweaks. And then we make a lot of revisions based on those comments. Then we put out proposed rules, and then finally there's also usually a step there that involves the public engagement piece where we let the public see what our proposed rules are, and they make comments, and then we'll take those comments and adopt final rules, considering those comments. So if we move to the next slide, the APA, as I said, contemplates that this rulemaking process is going to be very public, and it actually calls into play a couple specific kinds of efforts that will ensure a very public process. And one of those is negotiated rulemaking. And the APA defines it as a process by which representatives of an agency and all of the interested parties of a subject rule work together to reach consensus on the terms of the proposed rules and on the process itself by which it's negotiated. So that means that the negotiated rulemaking has the following attributes. Number one, all the participants are representing stakeholder groups, interests, organizations, or in other words, they're not simply there representing themselves. Usually they will have their own interests, but they're also there to represent the interests of a larger organization. Second attribute is that, all necessary interests are represented, or at least supportive of the discussion. So the agency needs to be very careful to invite everybody to the negotiation table that's going to be affected by those rules. The third attribute is that participants share responsibility for both the process and the outcome. So at the beginning of the process, all the participants or negotiators are going to agree on the process that will be followed to negotiate the language, and then they're also responsible for the negotiation and the outcome of the product. The fourth attribute is an impartial facilitator is accountable to all participants and manages the process. So there's someone who's kind of shepherding the process that doesn't have standing, but all the participants, all the negotiators have equal standing. The fifth attribute is the intent is to make decisions through consensus rather than by voting. So there will be a way to measure acceptance of rule and not necessarily vote on it. Sixth attribute is that agency is a party at the negotiating table. It's not just there to facilitate consensus. So as I said, there's a neutral facilitator, and then all of the parties at the table have an equal standing, and one of those parties would be the agency. And the last attribute is, at the end of the day, at the end of this process, there's a proposed rule that all parties can at least support, if not embrace. So hopefully we're all happy at the end of the process. We move to the next slide. It describes Dell's statutory requirement to negotiate, and not all agencies have a statutory requirement to negotiate their rules. Dell is one of them that's required by law to negotiate, and the scope of the statutory required negotiation is to negotiate with family home providers, any licensing rules, and as well as all other affected parties. So that's what brings us into this process. We have an actual statutory requirement to do so. Again, negotiating those rules are
or at least acceptance of the rule language that comes out of that negotiation. As we go through this process, we're going to be looking at increments of rules or different packages. As you saw in the timeline, it's a lengthy process that goes over the summer, and each month introduces a new set of rules that the negotiators will look at. As we go through that process, it's not totally done as we reach consensus on all the rules. At the end, we'll circle back and look at the complete package one last time to make sure that there's acceptance of the entire package. And then that package that the negotiators have settled on goes back to organizations that those stakeholders represent for a formal ratification, if you will. And that may be that they take the rules to their membership, if they're a membership organization. If they're not a membership organization, maybe like the Department of Early Learning, where we have a director who has to sign off on the proposals. Whatever it means for those stakeholders, we're going to go back to those organizations and get a final approval of the negotiated language. If we move on to the next slide, it describes what Bill's role in this negotiation will be. So we're the organizer of the process. We're developing a framework and protocol that will be a discussion point for when we go into negotiation with all of the stakeholders. They will actually weigh in on the framework and protocol that we develop, and there's probably going to be some tweaking to get the product that everybody is happy with. Bill is also putting together a communication structure so that we can support this process by making it very public. We'll talk to you in a minute about what that means. We're providing support to the negotiation teams, so administrative support. Hopefully, whatever they need, we can support them with. And finally, collaboration and coordination with the stakeholders. So we're making sure that all the parties that are affected by these rules are part of this process. They're all given equal standing, and we're developing a process that hopefully they can all embrace. We'll also facilitate the process as we go through as I said, we're developing a framework that the negotiators will approve before we get started. And so we'll carry out that framework, move the parties through it, and make sure that there's consensus at the end and fidelity to the process. We're also providing a team of negotiators who will have equal standing with all the other parties in the process. And then, as I said, we do have to bring these back to our director. They are agency rules. I believe that we'll have some sideboards up originally where we have some understanding of what our director will be able to support or not support as we go through, that will play into the negotiations from the agency's team. But we do have to bring them back to the director because he is the one with the statutory authority to adopt these rules. So if we go on to the next slide, I guess that takes us to the point where we'll entertain questions about this process.
Let's see. We do have one question. Will other stakeholders be included in the negotiating rulemaking process or just SEIU?
No. We're going to go on and talk about the other stakeholders that are involved. As I said, we're making sure we're inviting all of the parties that are
So center providers will most likely be included.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's one big negotiation. It's not separately negotiated with all these parties. So let's just dive in and talk about that process.
And one other question for negotiating teams that are not representing a clear membership body, such as SEIU, how will recruitment for teams be conducted?
Okay, we're going to cover that. So let's move forward and keep those questions in mind if we will not be able to answer specific questions at the time of the big question. So as we are moving forward with the alignment licensing rules, negotiation is the next step, and we would like, as Lori been saying, we're required, and we would like to be as inclusive as possible. So we'd like to consider all of the stakeholders, whether it be providers, parents, stakeholder organizations, or public who are interested in this process to be part of it. So keep in mind, again, going back to the legal grounds for this process, the public comments is what is the main foundational piece. The negotiated rulemaking is a part of the public comments process. It's kind of nesting dolls. The public comments is a big doll, and the negotiated rulemaking is a small doll. So this is what we need to consider. So we can come back to this particular slide 57. Actually, one of the questions we will ask ELAC will be about this particular slide. But now I would like to talk a little bit more about how we are rolling out the process and who we think are the impacted parties, as the law is saying. So we've been considering the family home providers, the child care center providers, the ECAP head start providers, and parents, as well as the department. Those five groups being the impacted parties. So what we've been looking for, we've been looking at each of those impacted parties will have its own negotiated team. So we would like to have a team of negotiators at the table, as we've been saying, all at once together, because these rules will impact all us together, not separately. So then we will need to discuss and negotiate them all together, not separately. How we've been thinking who can organize different subgroups of stakeholders in this process. So family home providers, they do have a formal structure that organizing them, which is SEIU, and we hope that this will be a collaborative process. So all our main partners that I will name right now will be working together as backbone organizations behind the actual providers who will have to be part of this negotiation. So for the family home providers, again, it will be SEIU. For child care center providers, we're asking TAG to play a role of the backbone organization. And if you have a specific interest to become a part of the negotiation versus the overall public comment, and we will talk about it in a second, then absolutely please contact by 5, and they kind of started to think about how coordinate their efforts to play a backbone role in putting all of the center directors together. Would it be small centers, big centers, will it be school district settings for the centers, or would it be Montessori, and so on. So think about all of the possible programs and settings that our centers are using in order to provide center-based services. Then for ECAP and Head Start, once a month association for ECAP and Head Start agreed to play a backbone role in organizing ECAP and Head Start providers. We are looking at them as a subset of family home and center providers because we all know that it's a big push and it's a big goal to move majority of the ECAP and Head Start services to the extended day services, up to 6-hour services and more. So it means that majority of those providers, even if they're not currently possibly a part of the licensing system, they will be a part of the licensing system. So it's their opportunity to actually negotiate the rules that they will be operating based on, even if they will start providing more than 4-hour services today. And then we have parents as a big, and families as a big subgroup that will be impacted by these new rules. I would like to invite them to the negotiation table, and we're asking out here where is there one organization out there who search for the support from the parent advisory group, from the WASA, from the Washington Association of ECAP and Head Start, for the parents ambassador group, from the coalitions, from Thrive and other stakeholders to organize it. So as you see, the main partners as we see them in this process will be SAIU, Thrive by 5, Turkey Aware, WASA, as well as coalitions, regional learning coalitions playing a role in it. So we will be able to identify those providers who would like to compete for their summer to be at the negotiation table. So moving to the next slide, so how many people we would like to see at the table? So we can take in that each team, and I will say one more time, each team. So we're talking right now about 5 teams, including Department for Learning, will have up to 20 members. There will be different roles and different responsibilities for members in a team, and it's what will the framework and the protocol define. And as we're still drafting it and didn't have a chance to finalize it yet, we cannot share it with you today, but we will be more than happy to share it in the next meeting, or we can organize a separate webinar to talk specifically about how we're moving forward with this process. Just let us know what they're prepared for you. And as soon as the teams will be organized by our partners, our main partners, then we will negotiate the framework in a protocol with the teams, and we will, as Lloyd been saying, and adjust it and edit it as much as needed. So all the teams will be fine with this protocol, and all the teams will be fine to keep the development process in place and negotiate in a fair way, in a committed way, looking forward to have a final subset of the licensing rules that we all agree and could live with. So looking at the logistics of the process, knowing that we are all operate statewide and we have providers around the state, and we also must make this process public. We've been looking at the K-12 testing system and partnership with EATs who do have the statewide K-20 system in place. And we've also been thinking to establish 4 main K-20 locations, as well as the regional K-20 locations. If you will look at this graphic on the slide, as you see each month, in May, in June, in July, and August, we will be negotiating different buckets of the rules. And as we will look at the timeline, we can talk a little bit more about it, but I will give you kind of a general perspective of it. So in May, we will do the introductions of the framework and the protocol, and then we will move forward with negotiating the first bucket of the rules. Then in June, we will come back and review what we've been able to negotiate and what we possibly may not be able to negotiate in May, and try to do it again. And then we will focus on the second bucket of the rules. Then in July, we will review what we were not able to negotiate in June and try to do it one more time. And then we will move to negotiation of the third bucket, the final bucket of the rules. And in August, we will convene for the last time all together, as already been described, and look at the full package of the rules. And again, try to make a peace and live with whatever we were not able to negotiate yet. And then the package as it will be developed will move for our organizations to review and Director Hunter to approve for moving forward for the filing of the rules. And again, keep in mind, the filing of the rules doesn't mean that they will be enforced. Keep in mind the timeline. We're filing the rules with an enforcement date of not sooner than August of 2018. Any questions? Okay, so keep noticing, and I'm more than sure you're wondering what is the public comments in all of it. So we've been looking at the small goal. Remember the analogy of the nested dolls? So we've been looking at the negotiated rulemaking, the small nested doll, how it will work. So let's look at the big nested doll, how the public comments will absorb the negotiated rulemaking and be able to be simultaneously done all at once. So public comments process, as you know, we are required by the law to ensure that no one has been left out of this process. So all of the stakeholders and parties impacted by this change will be part of the public comment process. So we believe the process will be parallel and interconnected with negotiated rulemaking. And one of the ways to engage the community is to create an alignment campaign. Alignment campaign idea is not the department idea per se, it actually came as an idea from the alignment advisory committee. So how to create space for the providers, different types of providers, to self-organize themselves and have a chance to collectively review the proposed rules and provide comments, not only to the public comments portal, but also for negotiation process. So as you see in the graph in the bottom of the slide, so this is how you get involved in this process. You can be involved through the alignment campaign in a group setting, or you as a part of the public or a stakeholder or an individual could be involved in an independent level, or you can do both. So you can contact SIU or TRAC or CCA or WASO or Department of Early Learning and ask us a simple question: I would like to be involved. I would like to organize an alignment campaign. How would I be able to do it? So we'll be more than happy to help you with that. And we identified a set of resources specifically accessible for the community organizations who would like to organize the alignment campaigns, who would like to support providers to review the proposed licensing rules. As you see, this group review process will also create comments to the proposed rules, and organizations who are taking the responsibilities for organizing the alignment campaign will be also taking the responsibilities for collecting this data of comments and then uploading this, submitting this group data, group comments into the online public comments portal. And at the same time, any individual doesn't matter they participated in a group setting or they did not participate in a group setting and they reviewed the rules independently, can do the same, can submit their comments to the online public comments portal. We're required by law, because there's a lot of questions about how my comments will be considered. We're required by law to review every single comment and provide feedback or provide our next steps in regard of every single comment. Will we consider it? We will not consider it, and why I will not consider it, or why I would consider it. So your comment will not be unanswered. This is what I'm trying to say. We're required to answer every single comment. And we make group comments if they will come together and they will be similar, but we need to list every single comment and explain how those comments will group. So moving forward to communication plan, it's what Lauren has been mentioning. So we definitely have to communicate, and it's what we are doing right now with you, because we need your feedback and your input in regard of how this communication will go forward with all of the communities. What will be the best way? And will you be open and agreeing to support us with it? We need to communicate the purpose and interconnectivity of both of the processes, negotiated rulemaking and public comments. And also, we need to highlight the inclusiveness of this negotiated rulemaking process as well as the public comments process. So all stakeholder groups who are directly impacted by a part of their process. Negotiation meetings are open for public as well as their alignment cafes are open for public. Progress reports at the meetings, we would like to see those progress reports in consistently ongoing manner, and also and hopefully archive all of them so you can see them alive and you can also see the archived videos of the negotiated rulemaking. And also creating an ongoing communication along between public comments or public and the negotiation teams. And if we will go to the next slide, you can see a graph of how we are thinking to do it. So we have 5 negotiation teams, Family Home Center, ELAC, Parents of Department of Illinois, and we are planning to establish teams online input mailboxes. So providers who are not a part of negotiation, parents, stakeholders, public who, for a number of reasons, could not commit to the negotiation process, but still would like to be highly engaged in it, will have a chance to provide their comments to specific team, negotiation team. And those mailboxes will be available only to particular negotiation team, and each negotiation team will have responsibility to review them in an ongoing manner and consider the comments and suggestions and recommendations that are coming from the public and coming from their colleagues and stakeholders through the negotiation. So as you see, public comments also will be heavily involved in the negotiation process by not submitting comments only to the online portal for public comments, but also submitting recommendations to the negotiation teams. So this is the timeline with action steps for negotiation, rulemaking, and public comments. So in the bottom of this graph, as you see, there is a main August ongoing solicitation of public comments. It's an ongoing process. Online portal will be open all the time. And how the alignment cafe structure will work is all up to the organizations who would like to take the lead and organize them in their communities. In January and April is our pre-talk. You can see what we're really working on. And then, as I've been describing, May, June, July, and August are our time for the negotiated rulemaking, and different buckets of the rules will be reviewed at different months. And August is final negotiation, 5 days of final negotiation. Any questions about the logistics or process or approach that we're putting together? Okay, so then we do have some questions for you. We fully understand that it will be very challenging to do it on a webinar, but it's your homework then. So the first question for you, or first test for you, what community stakeholders organizations could be leading facilitating community alignment cafe activities? So we're thinking that coalitions could be interested, regional childcare aware teams could be interested, some WASA could be interested to take the lead on some of them for Sound and BCAP, Montessori Association could be interested to do it. Who do you know, what kind of organizations could be interested to do it? We do know that there are a number of center directors, groups around the state that would be interested to take the lead. We know that big chains that enterprises and KinderCare may be interested to take the lead on it for their own providers. So is who else we may need to engage in the process, so we will have a well-established alignment cafe structure around the state, and we will identify appropriate resources that structure may be needed. And the second question for you, what additional participation venues for providers, parents, and stakeholders, but as well as public, you will recommend to consider? And if you will go this parameter error on the slide 57. Okay. Sorry, can you mute yourself? Supposed to be listening to your. Oh. Oh, okay, gotcha. I can't get into the solutions. I'm sorry, we can hear you as you're talking and we can't continue. Ready?
We can hear you guys. If you can mute your phones, please.
Okay, so if you will go to the slide 37, it's where you can see different stakeholders. It's where you can see different stakeholders. And this is what we see as a possibility for them to get involved. As you see, providers, parents, public, and stakeholder organizations. And maybe you can look at the provider subset in a more precise way, thinking about family phone providers, thinking about center providers, thinking about diverse providers. So how all of these different types of providers could enter and be engaged in both processes, negotiated rulemaking as well as public comments. And also how parents could be, and also how different stakeholder organizations could be. So please give us additional advice on how to engage as many partners and as many parties who will be impacted by this change in implementation of their proposed licensing rules. So with this, we're moving to the final slide with final questions about our presentation today. What questions come into your mind? Would it be about alignment process? Would it be about waiting logs? Would it be about negotiated rulemaking or public comments? Please let us know. Or would it be your own questions that you would like to clarify things for?
There's a few things that have come in. One question is the Community Cafe Collaborative still operational?
It's a great point. And do you know who is overseeing it? Is it the coalition piece? Who is overseeing the Community Cafe Collaborative? And it will be great to get in contact with whoever is behind it and see how we can actually use the structure. And if it's a specific organization or specific organizations behind it, how we can use them as a platform.
Okay. Response to that, it was several years ago that I heard about it, but Alicia Luna was a lead for a name.
If anyone has a contact Alicia Luna or someone else who has been involved with it, just let us know. We'll definitely get in touch with them and see how we can use the same, possibly the same structure or in concept. Let's see what is in place.
Okay. And there's a few comments to the ELAC questions.
Okay.
So a couple about the groups. WFIS for all private schools with preschools.
Okay, that's a good point.
And directors groups across the state, as well as groups that focus on specific communities of color.
So director groups across the state, we do have some, but we don't know all of them. So it would be great if you know your community, so it would be great if you can send us and submit your answers. Is it easy, Anna?
Yeah, that's also
Yes, yes. You know where submitted, so you usually submit all of the questions, comments, please use the same email address and send it. Again, about the standard directors group, I know it's very challenging to reach all to us, but again, we're going to know governance structure or someone who has connection, organization who has connection to all of them. So if you know about some of them, please email us, as me, as you know, and as me contact information, as you know, it will tremendously help Thrive by Five to try to contact them all and have a presentation from each of them at the negotiation table.
Okay. And there's another question. What is the time commitment for people participating on a negotiated rulemaking team?
So it will depend on the role and responsibility responsibility of the member of the team. So there's definitely alternative information of the member slots. I mean, some majority of their members will be going to use this particular exchangeable. So it's not even for 4 months, but for some number of members in taking specific roles, like for example, a lead of this particular group, it will be written for 4 months. So what I'm trying to put together right now a protocol and a framework, and again, we will be more than open to meet next month or have a webinar next month if you will be interested, where we can share with you our thinking about the protocol and the framework. We're meeting this week with our partners, with SAU, with Thrive by 5, WASA, and Childcare Aware, Washington, and we would like to bring to their attention the first draft of the framework and protocol and hear their feedback. And after that, we will be ready to share it with you. So please let us know through Diana if you would like to see it and when you will be available to see it. There's a possibility to participate without a long-term commitment button point.
Do you have the email for Thrive that they should be contacting?
They can send an email to the SLC inbox, so it's slc@del.wa.gov, and we will connect you. We'll find out who we can send all of that to, and we'll follow up an email to Slack.
Because right now they're also trying to figure out who will be the lead, so they don't know who will be from their organization lead there. So we're meeting them this week, as already mentioned, and after that we will know more who will be leading this work at Thrive.
Okay. Have you approached the State Interagency Coordinating Council for feedback?
Yes. So definitely we would like to bring it to their attention. And each people be a part of the alignment process and advisory group for through the whole process. So definitely we will ask them if they would like to bring it to the institute attention. Yes.
Okay, and then in that 4-month time frame for the rulemaking team, do you know yet how often the groups will meet? What will be the overall hour commitment for the meeting?
So I can say what we are thinking right now about. It's not set in stone, and in some way I'm making it up right now. So please don't keep me accountable for what I will say right now. By our preliminary conversations with people who've been negotiating and facilitating big negotiation meetings like what we're planning to have. And also considering that majority of the people who will be at the negotiation table will be providers. So we're currently looking at weekends. So providers will be actually able to negotiate, to be at the table. So we're looking at approximately 5 days each month, but those 5 days will be divided in 2 weekends. So let's say 2 days of one weekend reviewing what we negotiated the month before, and 3 days a separate weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, negotiating a new bucket of the rules. May will be shorter because it will be the beginning of negotiations, so it will be 3 days only. But there will be weekends. And we're also looking at, you see, if you will, the main locations of the P20, we're also looking at main locations all around the state. So right now we're looking at Powerwater, Olympia, Renton, and Spokane. Those 4 as main locations, and those 4 also will serve as the satellite locations. Let's say if we will be in Yakima, then Spokane, Powerwater, and Renton will be satellite. If we will be in Renton, then Powerwater, Yakima, and Spokane will be satellite. So it means that your team members don't have to be at the main location. They can participate in the satellite location around the state, and they still can play a role in the negotiation through satellite. There will be facilitators not only in the main location, but also in satellite locations. So there will be organization in place, and there will be coaches, and there will be support established, and so on. So we're learning through the CCDF. Each one of the meetings, and we identify that it's very important to have facilitators at the satellite location. So people will gather right there, and people will be taken care of right there.
Okay. Nothing else coming in?
So it seems like we don't have any more questions. So with this, I will on a meeting, but again, I know that it's a lot to process. So please send your additional comments, questions, suggestions to the email that you have. Also, please give us specific guidance in those two questions that we ask for advice. And if you do have contact information, if you will suggest us to contact particular group, please also include the contact information so we will know who to contact with and who to refer to and who recommended them. Because, you know, it will be great if you will help us with introductions and with networking. Thank you so much. Appreciate your patience today going through this long update. But I hope it will help for you and definitely been very helpful for us. Happy Monday and have a good week.
Thank you.